Vanessa tells her story saying, "I'm Vanessa Cabral. I'm 25, Portuguese on my mom's side. My grandmother came over from the Azores in like 1974 and settled in East Providence. And I'm a hairstylist. I went to the Avida Institute in Providence for cosmetology, which put me about $9,400 in debt, still paying that off in little chunks whenever I have extra. I've got a chipped front tooth from a bike accident when I was 11 that I've just never fixed because dental work is expensive. And honestly, it kind of gives me character at this point. I've got a scissors and rose tattoo on my forearm that I did specifically because hair is my whole thing. I'm about 5'4", curvier. I own it. I dye my hair constantly. Right now, it's got a money piece platinum front with dark brown underneath. And before all this went down, I was working at a fantastic Sam's off Reservoir Ave in Cranston doing fine. Not great, paycheck to paycheck fine. Splitting a place in Pawtucket with 2 roommates for $550 a month each, pulling in maybe $42,000 a year between hourly and tips, which in Rhode Island, where rent has gotten absolutely insane the last few years, is enough to survive, but not enough to ever feel ahead. I had built up a decent little following on my hair Instagram at Share, like 4,200 followers, mostly local, posting color transformations. And that's actually how Tony found me. He slid into my DMs in like September of 2024, saying, "Love your work, doll. Ever think about a real salon instead of a chain?" And normally, I'd have ignored something like that as some kind of scam or a guy trying to slide into more than my inbox. But he had his actual salon tagged, Bella Rosa Salon and Spa on Atwell's Ave in Federal Hill, which I'd actually walked by 100 times. It's got the gold script lettering on the window and everything. It looked legit. So I looked him up, 43 years old at the time, owns the building, been in the industry like 20 years, and I agreed to meet him for coffee at 7 Stars Bakery on Hope Street. And I remember exactly what I ordered: an almond croissant and an iced oat milk latte, because I was so nervous I could barely eat it. And he showed up in this gray quarter zip that smelled like a quad-geo. So strong I could smell it before he even sat down, wearing a little gold horn pendant around his neck, the Cornicolo thing, Italian good luck charm. And he had this way of talking where he leaned in real close, like you were the only person in the room, calling me doll within like 10 minutes of meeting me, which normally would have made me roll my eyes. But there was something about the way he did it that felt more like an old school Providence guy thing than a red flag, if that makes sense. Like half the older guys from Federal Hill talk like that. He offered me a chair at Bella Rosa on the spot, told me my color work was better than half the girls he had, said the last stylist in my chair, quote, wasn't a good fit, which I now know is a whole loaded sentence I completely glossed over at the time. And he offered me the deal of the century, basically. First 3 months rent-free while I built up my client list. And after that, only $200 a week booth rent, when everybody I talked to said market rate in that part of Providence was more like $300 to $350 a week. So obviously I said yes. I gave my 2 weeks at Fantastic Sam's, my manager there, Denise, actually. Weird coincidence I'll get back to. Was annoyed but understanding. And I started at Bella Rosa in October of 2024. The first few months were honestly great, not gonna lie. I built up a client base fast because Federal Hill has money, older Italian ladies who tip like crazy. And Tony was around a lot, helping me close up some nights, bringing me coffee unprompted, remembering stuff I mentioned once like my niece's birthday, or that I hated Mondays. And slowly it turned into something more, which I want to be honest and say I did not resist very hard. He was funny. He made me feel like the most important person in any room. And he told me pretty early on, maybe month 2, that he was separated from his wife, Denise. Yeah, that's not the same Denise from Fantastic Sam's. I know, small state, everybody's named Denise, that they'd been living apart for over a year, that she kept the house in Cranston, and he was basically already divorced, except for the actual paperwork. And I remember specifically asking, because I'm not a complete idiot, so like, are you guys like legally separated? Is there paperwork happening? And he said, yeah, babe, it's in the works. My lawyer's just slow. This stuff takes forever in Rhode Island courts, which, fun fact, is actually kind of true. Our family court is notoriously backed up, so it was believable enough that I let it go. Around February of 2025, so about 4 months in, he mentioned that he owned the triple-decker next to the salon and had a unit opening on the 3rd floor and offered it to me for $900 a month, when comparable one-bedrooms in that neighborhood were going for $1,500 easy. He called it the friends and family rate, and I jumped on it immediately because who wouldn't? I moved in that March, and this is where things start blending together in this really specific way that I think was intentional even if I couldn't see it then. Because now my landlord was also my boss, was also my boyfriend, all one person. And there was no separation anywhere in my life from him. Every part of my income and my home and my career ran through Tony Marchetti. He started staying over almost immediately since it was his building anyway. Brought a toothbrush, then a whole drawer of clothes, then his cologne on my bathroom counter. And I remember thinking it felt so natural, like we were already basically living together, playing house. And I ignored the fact that he never once introduced me to a single friend of his outside of work. Never took me anywhere in Cranston. Never took me to any family thing. He always had an excuse. My mom's weird about me dadding right now, with the divorce still finalizing. And I ate that excuse up for way longer than I should have. Okay, spoiler. This gets so much worse before I get to the marriage stuff, because the money situation actually started spiraling around summer of 2025. He came to me in June saying the salon needed new equipment, new shampoo bowls, new dryer chairs. The old stuff was from like 2011, and he needed a business loan. but his credit was wrecked from a bankruptcy he'd filed back in 2019 after a previous salon he owned in Warwick failed, which he told me about very casually, like it was just a funny old story. Yeah, I went belly up on that one, learned a lot. And he asked if I'd cosigned since my credit was actually decent. I had like a 690 at the time, no real debt besides the student loan, and he framed it as an investment in our future. He kept saying our, like the salon was already partly mine. He even said, "Once this is paid off, I want to put your name on the sign too. Bella Rosa and Vanessa has a ring to it, right?" Which now sounds insane typed out, but at the time felt like a proposal almost, like he was planning a life with me. We went to Coastal One Credit Union together in July. I signed for a $16,800 equipment loan. He promised he'd make every single payment, $312 a month. And for about 2 months, he actually did, or told me he did. I never actually saw proof. I just took his word for it, because why would you ask your boyfriend for receipts? On top of that loan, there were smaller asks that kept trickling in. In August, he needed $1,200 cash for the salon's insurance renewal because his card got declined that week. I Venmo'd it to him with the caption, "Insurance, pay me back whenever lol," which I still have a screenshot of. That lol haunts me a little. And in September, he needed $2,000 for quarterly taxes for the business, cash this time. I took it out of my own savings, and by October, I'd personally given him about $3,200 on top of the loan, none of which I ever saw come back. And every time I brought it up, gently he'd say something like, "Babe, I got you. You know I got you. Don't worry about the small stuff. Focus on your clients," which somehow always made me feel guilty for even asking, like I was being petty over money when we were supposedly building something together. Around this same time, the chair rental discount quietly disappeared too. My $200 a week crept up to $250. Then in November, he told me rent on the apartment was going up to $1,200 a month because of market adjustment, even though nothing in that building had been touched since I moved in. No upgrades. The same water stain on my bathroom ceiling was still there, and I paid it anyway, because at that point, everything felt too tangled to unwind. My job, my home, my relationship, all one man. And if I made a fuss about any single piece of it, I risked all of it collapsing at once. My sister Melissa, who I'm staying with now, actually said something to me way back in like August of 2025 at her daughter's, my niece Sophia's, 7th birthday party at a Chuck E. Cheese in Seekonk of all places. She pulled me aside by the ball pit while Happy by Farrell was playing way too loud over the arcade noise and said, "Why does Tony still not come to family stuff? It's been like a year. That's weird, Nessa. That's a weird amount of time for a guy to hide you." And I remember getting defensive, saying his divorce is still finalizing. He doesn't want drama around his kids. And she said, "Wait, he has kids." And I froze because I actually didn't know the exact number at that point. He'd mentioned the kids, in passing maybe twice, vaguely. Never names, never ages. And I just said, yeah, I think like 2. And Melissa gave me this look, this specific big sister look, and said, you think. You've been with this man like a year and you think he has 2 kids. And I brushed her off. I said something like, it's complicated. His divorce made everything messy. I'm not gonna push. And I genuinely believed I was being the mature, understanding girlfriend in that moment, not the person being strung along, which, yeah. So here's the actual discovery. And it's not dramatic in the way you'd think. It's honestly kind of pathetic how mundane it was. It was a random Tuesday in December 9th. I remember because it was right after we'd done a secret Santa thing at the salon. And I got a mini bottle of Bailey's from one of the other girls. And Tony was over at my place. He was in the shower, and his phone was charging on my kitchen counter, screen facing up, and it lit up with a text, and I wasn't even trying to snoop. I was just standing right there waiting for the Keurig, and the notification said Denise read, and underneath it, don't forget Dominic has his dentist apt at 4. Can you pick him up from Ava's practice after? That's it. That's the whole text. Not even dramatic. No accusation, no fight. Just a mom reminding a dad about a dentist appointment. And something about how normal and boring it was made it hit so much harder than if it had been something scandalous. Because it meant this was just his actual real functioning life. A life with school pickups and dentist appointments, and a wife who still had a heart emoji next to her name in his phone. Not some bitter, estranged situation. An active family. I stood there holding my coffee mug, just staring at his locked screen until it went black again. And when he came out of the shower, a few minutes later, I just said, real calm, too calm, honestly, who's Ava and Dominic? And I watched his whole face do this thing, this little flicker before he settled into an explanation. And he said, those are my cousin's kids. Why? And I said, your phone says Denise is picking Dominic up from Ava's practice. That's a really specific lie for a cousin's kid. And that's when he switched tactics completely. Got quiet, sat on the edge of my bed in just a towel, and said, okay, look, it's not what you think, Denise, and I still co-parent, obviously, because of the kids. That doesn't mean anything's going on between us. And I said co-parent implies you're actually divorced, Tony. Are you divorced? And there was this pause, this real long pause. And he said, the paperwork's basically done. I told you that. And I said, you've been telling me that for over a year. And he got defensive, raised his voice a little, said you knew I had a complicated situation when we started this. Don't act surprised now. Which, even in the moment, I remember thinking, wait, did I know that? Or did you just keep the word complicated doing a whole lot of work for over a year? I didn't kick him out that night, which I know, but I need to be honest about how messy this actually was, because it wasn't a clean line from discovery to done. I let him sleep there that night, in my apartment that he owned, because I genuinely didn't know what else to do, where else he'd even go at 11 at night. And I laid there next to him, not sleeping at all, running through every excuse he'd ever given me for missed weekends and mysterious trade shows. And the fact he never once, not once in 14 months, took me anywhere further than Cranston Line. The next morning, I did some digging, and this is where I found the geotag thing that basically confirmed there was no ambiguity left to hide behind. I went on his public Instagram, which he barely posted on, but there was a photo from that August, from around the same time he told me he was at a plumbing supply and salon distributor convention in Hartford for 4 days, tagged at a house on Cape Cod, captioned Marchetti Family Week 2025, water wave with him. A woman I now know is Denise, and 2 kids. And I sat there doing the math on my phone, comparing the post date to the Venmo request I'd sent him that same week for the insurance renewal money, and it lined up exactly. He was at the beach with his actual wife and kids the same week he was texting me that he missed me and couldn't wait to see me when he got back from Hartford a couple days after that. And this is honestly the part that made my whole body go cold. I got a DM on Instagram from a woman named Priscilla Andrade, someone I didn't know, and she said, "Hey, this is random, but I used to work at Bella Rosa in 2022. Are you still living at the Sutton Street apartment above the shop? I lived there too before I quit. I saw you comment on his post a while back, and I've been debating messaging you for weeks." And my stomach just dropped reading that. And I called her that same night, and she told me almost the exact same story, down to the friends and family apartment rate, down to him telling her his divorce was basically finalized, down to him asking her to help cover a supply order once because his card got declined. She said she left in early 2023 after she found out about Denise a totally different way, through his mother accidentally mentioning the wife at a shop Christmas party. And she said, "I always wondered if he did it again. I almost messaged you last year when I first saw you tagged and stuff, but I figured it wasn't my business." And I remember asking her, almost pleading, "Did you ever get your money back? Did he ever pay you back for anything?" And she just laughed, this tired kind of laugh, and said, "Girl, no, I lost like $4,000 total between rent stuff and covering supplies. I just cut my losses and left. You're gonna have to do the same." I confronted him for real, the real final confrontation, about a week later in the back parking lot of the salon, behind the dumpsters basically, because I didn't want to do it inside in front of clients or the other stylists. And it was freezing. I remember my breath fogging up while I talked, and I had my phone out with the geotagged photo pulled up, and I just held it up and said, "Explain this, and don't say cousin again." And he actually laughed, this short, humorless laugh, and said, "You went through my Instagram like a psycho," which deflect much. And I said, "You were at the Cape with your wife the same week you told me you were in Hartford. And Priscilla already told me everything, so don't." And his whole face changed the second I said her name. Like actual fear flickered through it for half a second before he covered it back up with this fake calm. And he said, "Priscilla's bitter. She stole product from me before she left. Whatever she told you isn't the full story." And I said, "She told me the exact same story you told me. Word for word, the divorce, the apartment, all of it. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." and he didn't really have an answer for that. He just stood there with his hands in his jacket pockets. And then he switched again, went soft, said, "Vanessa, come on. You know what we have is real, Denise, and I are just. It's complicated with the business assets. If we actually finalize things right now, I lose the building. I lose everything. I'm trying to protect what we're building together too." And I remember standing there in the cold thinking, there is no we. There has never been a we. There's just him and Denise and their real family, and me, on the outside paying rent to be there. I told him I wanted the equipment loan handled, that he needed to refinance it into just his name or start actually paying it off consistently because my credit was attached to it. And he said, and I quote, "I'm working on it. Don't stress about it right now. We've got bigger things to figure out." Which, spoiler, he never worked on it at all. Within about 3 weeks of that conversation, he basically stopped coming to the salon regularly, started having his assistant manager, a woman named Carla, who I actually liked, tell clients he was dealing with some personal stuff. And by late January of this year, so just a couple months ago, the equipment loan payment bounced for the first time. Then again in February, and I got a notice from Coastal One Credit Union that the account was delinquent. And since I was a cosigner, I was fully responsible for the remaining balance, which at that point with fees was sitting around $15,900. I tried calling him probably 30 times over 2 weeks, texted him constantly. At one point, sending something like, "Tony, the loan is going to collections. You need to call me back today." And I got left on read for 4 straight days before he finally responded with, "I know. I'm dealing with a lot right now. Give me some time," which is such a nothing response to something that's serious. Around the same time, I got a notice taped to my apartment door, an actual official notice, saying the building was being sold and all tenants had 30 days to vacate, which I later found out through Carla was because Tony was quietly liquidating what he could since Denise had apparently found out everything too, not from me. I never contacted her. I actually debated it for a long time and decided against it. I think she found out through her own means. Maybe the same collections calls hitting a joint account. Who knows? And once she found out, she was reportedly pushing hard for the actual divorce now, for real this time, and taking the building in the settlement. So he was scrambling to sell it off before that happened. And I got caught in the middle of that scramble with basically a month's notice to find a new place to live. I moved out in March, packed up my whole apartment with help from Melissa and her boyfriend, Anthony. Ironic first name, I know, in one weekend, and moved onto her pull-out couch in Pawtucket, where I still am right now typing this. The salon closed completely by April. Bella Rosa's Instagram just went dark. No announcement, nothing. The gold script sign is apparently still up on Atwell's Ave, but the windows are papered over now. I drove by once in May. I don't know why I did that to myself, and just sat in my car outside for a few minutes looking at the papered windows before driving off. I did go to the Providence police about the loan situation, filed a report, and it was pretty much what I expected after everything I'd read about people going through similar stuff. The officer was polite, but basically told me that since I willingly signed the loan documents, willingly gave cash on my own via Venmo, with no formal agreement attached, this was almost entirely a civil matter, not criminal fraud, unless I could prove he intentionally deceived me specifically for financial gain in a way that met the legal bar for fraud, which is really hard to do when there's no paper trail showing intent, just a pattern of behavior and a bitter ex-girlfriend's word against his. Or two bitter ex-girlfriends now, I guess, since Priscilla said she'd back me up if it ever went anywhere, which was nice of her, honestly. We've actually stayed in touch a bit since then, which is a weird kind of bonding. Two women who dated the same guy 2 years apart and got scammed the exact same way. We've joked darkly about starting a support group, calling it something ridiculous like Bella Rosa survivors, which we've never actually done, but it's a running joke in our texts now. My credit score, which was 690 before all this, is sitting at about 540 right now because of the delinquent equipment loan. I'm making minimum payments on it that I honestly can't fully afford. About $180 a month right now on a restructured plan the credit union offered after I explained the situation, which they were somewhat sympathetic to, but still made very clear I was fully liable regardless. And that's on top of my student loan, on top of trying to save up first and last month's rent for a new place, since I obviously can't stay on my sister's couch forever, even though she says she doesn't mind. Though I catch her boyfriend, Anthony, giving me looks sometimes when I'm still there on a Friday night that tell me he minds a little. I'm currently renting a chair at a different salon, Salon Capelli, on Broadway in Providence, paying full market rate this time, $325 a week, which honestly stings every single time I write that check, because I know exactly how good a deal I used to have, and exactly why it was too good to be true. I've had to rebuild a lot of my client base too, because a chunk of my regulars stayed loyal to the Bella Rosa name, or just to convenience of that location, and didn't follow me right away. Though some did. Actually, one of my best regulars, an older woman named Fran, who's been getting her hair done by me since month 2 at Bella Rosa, found out the whole story secondhand through the neighborhood grapevine, Federal Hill people talk, and she showed up at my new chair with a card that just said men are trash. Your hands aren't, which made me laugh so hard I almost cried in the middle of a blowout. I want to be honest that I have not fully let go of this the way I probably should have by now. It's been about 4 months since I moved out, and I still have his number saved even though he blocked me first, which is such a petty detail to still know. But I do know it because I tried texting him back in April, drunk, after 2 glasses of wine at my cousin's engagement party. Just a message that said, I hope Denise knows everything. I hope it was worth it. And it came back with the little red exclamation point. saying it couldn't be delivered, meaning he'd blocked me at some point without telling me. And finding that out felt oddly worse than the whole marriage reveal in some small, pathetic way. Like even the ending of it wasn't something I got to control or know about in real time. I still look at his Instagram sometimes, not his personal one since I can't get to that anymore. But I found out through Carla, who I'm still friendly with, that he's already opening a new place in Warwick under a different name, something called Bellissima Studio. And there's a promo Instagram for it already, with a soft opening date next month. And in the promotional photos, there's a new stylist, some girl who looks maybe 22, 23, standing next to him in front of a half-finished salon space with exposed drywall, both of them smiling for the camera. And I sat there staring at that photo for way too long one night, wondering if she has any idea, if anyone's going to message her the way Priscilla messaged me. And I actually debated doing it myself, being the one to send that DM this time. And I haven't yet. I don't know if I will. Part of me feels like I should, like it's the right thing to do. And part of me feels like it's not my responsibility to save every future woman from a decision he's going to keep getting away with regardless of what I do. And I genuinely go back and forth on that some nights, lying awake on this pull-out couch. I still have a cheap little charm bracelet he got me from Kohl's, of all places, for our 1 year, which in hindsight is such a specific detail that should have told me everything. A guy who lets you cosign a $16,800 loan for his business, but gets you a $24 bracelet from the clearance rack for an anniversary. And I haven't thrown it away yet. It's sitting in a Ziploc bag in my makeup bag. I don't wear it. I just haven't gotten rid of it. And I couldn't tell you exactly why. My sister thinks I need to see a therapist about the whole thing, and I probably do. I just haven't set that up yet because, between the loan payments and rebuilding my clientele, I genuinely don't have room in the budget right now for a copay every week. So mostly, I just talk to Melissa and to Priscilla and vent into my notes app at like 1 in the morning, which I guess turned into this whole thing I'm typing out right now. I don't really have some big closing realization about what I learned or how I'm different now, because honestly, some days I just feel embarrassed. Like, how did I not see it? The age gap, the secrecy, the way he was always vague about specifics. And other days I get so angry I want to drive to Warwick and stand outside that new salon with a sign. And other days, and this is the part I feel the most shame admitting, I just miss him. Not the version of events I know now to be true, but the version I actually lived through for those months. The guy bringing me coffee unprompted, remembering I hated Mondays, calling me doll in a way that used to make me feel safe instead of like a mark. And I know that person was mostly a performance, or at least a performance layered over whatever he actually is underneath. But I still catch myself missing the performance sometimes, which I know doesn't make a lot of sense, and I'm not going to pretend it does just to wrap this up neatly, because it doesn't feel neat at all. It just feels like I'm still in the middle of cleaning up a mess that hasn't finished happening yet. Still paying on a loan for equipment I never touched in a building. I don't work in anymore for a man. I can't even text if I wanted to. Still sleeping on a couch that smells like cat. Still wondering if that girl in the Warwick promo photos knows what she's actually standing next to.